Good morning, everyone. You're listening to 100.9 FM WXIR in Rochester. This is Evidence of Design. I'm your host, Jason Taylor, and I'm joined in the studio by my good friends and co-hosts, Matt Treadwell.
Good morning.
And Mary Lawrence.
Good morning.
If you're listening to the show right now, it's the 1st of February, the year 2020. That means we are live for you on 100.9 FM. Whether you're tuned in on that dial, online at www.1009wxir.com, the TuneIn app, or however else you're getting us in right now, we appreciate you being here and tuned in to a grassroots radio show. On Evidence of Design, on our show, we mainly critique income and wealth inequality. We explore why there's so much economic inequality, where that comes from, and what effects that has on our society. On today's show, we'll be covering a number of topics, all related to the future of our economy. There's a lot of changes happening right now on the sort of macro scale, on the big picture scale. Things like automation, things like the gig economy, the fourth industrial revolution, the need for a new business and social contract. Those are very big picture ideas that are being talked about right now in multiple spheres. For example, this past week, the World Economic Forum met in Davos, Switzerland. That is the annual meeting of some of the world's top both government and business leaders. We've covered their meetings in the past, particularly last year, mainly from a critical lens. The folks at the World Economic Forum largely promote free market capitalism and the business community as sort of the solution to a lot of the world's problems. Well, in the World Economic Forum, there's a lot of talk about the need for businesses to reinvent their purpose in society. For a long time, the business of business is and was business, as the famous free market economist Milton Friedman said. In other words, businesses were looking out for their own interests, and if they happened to benefit society, that was a cool thing as a byproduct, but was never something on purpose. And so on today's show, we're talking about a lot of this talk of the need for businesses to reinvent themselves specifically for the purpose of benefiting society, along with changes and what that means for the future of labor. What with automation, what with the fourth industrial revolution, what with things like the gig economy, what does it mean to work going forward? So we're getting into all of that this hour, and we would love to hear from you. You can give us a call at 585-219-8889. Again, that's 585-219-8889. Or you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at the handle Radio EOD. You can also email us at radioeod@gmail.com. With all of that being said, Matt, we ready to take it away?
We are.
Let's do it.
Computer World by Kraftwerk.
And this is Evidence of Design on 100.9 FM WXIR. At the top of the hour, we were talking about how the World Economic Forum met last week. Matt, we covered the World Economic Forum last year at their annual meeting. They sort of famously had a new manifesto on the future of business and capitalism. And we talked about how it was interesting, that manifesto, where all of a sudden they're like, businesses can no longer just afford to look out for their own interests. People are increasingly skeptical of business interests, and it could potentially be undermining faith in democratic institutions. Therefore, businesses must look out for social needs as well. And then you and I had a long, awkward silence like it's happening now, and we're like, is that a novel idea? Is that something that is new? And
only they hadn't burned so much of their goodwill already.
Right, and all those fossil fuels. But no, it sort of is funny because also last year there's the U.S. has what's called a business roundtable. It's sort of like the leading CEOs of the major corporations in America. Boeing and Bank of America and Apple and so on and so forth. And they came out with a new statement on the purpose of the corporation. And they say, quote, "We know that many Americans are struggling. Too often hard work is not rewarded, and not enough is being done for workers to adjust to the rapid pace of change in the economy. If companies fail to recognize that the success of our system is dependent on inclusive long-term growth, many will raise legitimate questions about the role of large employers in our society.
They say that as if it's not already happening.
Precisely. Yeah. So we're having this kind of interesting discussion today on this show about like the future of the economy, and wow, let's like get into it and dig into it. But it's like, whoa, aren't we, decades too short? And I think arguably that all of the political turmoil that we're experiencing right now in the Trump administration, with polarization, with mistrust in institutions and media and so on and so forth, is a direct result, I argue, from business practices, especially over the past 40 years, where we have sort of lived under a regime of short-term profit seeking at the expense of long-term sustainability and like trust and meaning making, And so now, when things look really bad, like climate change and like planetary apocalypse and collapse of democracies, institutions like that, I think businesses are sort of coming together now and saying like, wait, we kind of have to change something, because these younger generations of people think Greta Thunberg, the environmental activist, and millennial generation and so on and so forth are generally more skeptical of businesses. And so I think right now the business community is having sort of an about face or an attempt to say like, no, we're kind of, keep your faith in the business community, stick with us. We're doing more.
We didn't mean it.
Right. We didn't mean any of that for the past 4 years. That's kind of my theory. I'm curious, what others think. But this past week at Davos, a lot was talked about the future of the economy, particularly related to artificial intelligence and the effects that will have on labor. So, Matt, we looked at an article from the New Republic. That's a news source, and it was about the Silicon Valley economy. Silicon Valley is sort of the big tech mecca in California, where places like Facebook and Apple and sort of so on and so forth. Google, yeah, thank you, are sort of, a lot of their operations are based. And so Silicon Valley is sort of the mecca for a new form of capitalism, surveillance capitalism. We won't really get into that, but this article talked about some of the negative effects of the new Silicon Valley economy, as it's called. Do you want to share a little bit about kind of what was in that article and why we should be worried about some of the changes coming out of the big tech companies?
Yeah. Well, the article sort of made broader points about the gig economy while focusing on two companies, Instacart and Uber. And it sort of went into detail how many tech companies are choosing to classify, well, this is kind of where the controversy comes into, people who work for, Uber drivers or Instacart shoppers as contractors and not employees. And the main difference in so being is that contractors are often not afforded the same protections, employee-based insurance, sick time, vacation days, paid time off, as full-time or recognized employees are. And sort of as a result of that, they are also often they find it difficult to organize in unionized forces in order to better advocate for themselves and to sort of secure things like sustainable wages and sort of just basic protections that a lot of us take for granted.
So can you give a quick example of like the gig economy or gig work? Because I know we throw that term around, but like you talked about Instacart and things. What is the gig economy?
Well, it's sort of based on the idea of, I guess companies like Uber and Instacart and others that I can't think of right now would call it as like being your own boss, work the hours that you want to work. The idea is that, or I guess the sort of ideal is that you have the flexibility to set when you want to work. It's not like you have a sort of set amount of time that you need to be in the office at your desk working on whatever it is you're working at. You can sort of pick and choose when to sort of work, and you can set your schedule around that. If you're, for example, maybe a single parent who has kids to take care of, maybe this sort of gig work would appeal to you in that you can sort of base the hours you're working around the schedule that you have in order to meet your needs for like taking care of your kids, getting them to school, to clubs, and then in the time that they are occupied or not in your care, you can work and sort of make your living.
Yeah, so the gig economy is sort of this new term coming out of this modern world that we're living in, where there are jobs being created where people don't have the usual so-called contract between permanent employers. So instead of working a 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, you are instead sort of your own boss, as it is. People would argue that, oh yeah, you're your own boss. But Matt, in fact, like you're saying, that your hopes of financial stability and flexibility are oftentimes not as strong as one might think. So we're living in a society now where, because there's sort of a lack of long-term careers, there are things like gig jobs opening up. So, hey, you want to work for Uber, right? You just drive around. Except you got to use your own car, your own gas mileage, your own internet. You're not reimbursed for any of that. Whereas in a traditional employment relationship, your boss or employer will reimburse you for those mileage.
And that was one of the sort of points that the New Republic article brought up, which was that we're going to get into it a bit more in a little bit, but recently, last year, I believe, California signed into law, or Gavin Newsom, California's governor, signed into law, AB 5, Assembly Bill 5, which essentially made it more difficult for companies like Uber, like Instacart, to classify their workers as contractors instead of employees. And sort of in response to that, Uber announced that it was going to be raising the minimum wage of all of its workers to something like $15 and some change, I think. However, that was sort of seen as an appeasement and not really like meaningful change by many people, because once you factor in the amount of money that Uber drivers are spending like on their own mileage, the amount of hours that they're actually able to work, the total amount of money that they're making is something more like $5 an hour, which is far below California's minimum wage, which sits at $12. So it's a complex issue, and there's a lot of nuance necessary in order to understand it.
Yeah, so a pro of the gig economy is like, yeah, you can be your own boss, you can set your own hours, and you have the flexibility to kind of make some money either on the side or as your full-time job if you have other obligations in life. A critique of the gig economy is that it's just a way for companies to skirt labor laws and not compensate people for other forms of safety nets that we've come to expect from employment. You brought up something known as AB 5. Mary, I want you to jump in on this. So this was kind of an effort from the government in California to try to say, look, companies, especially Silicon Valley companies here, you can't just treat all of these people who are doing work for you as contractors, as glorified contractors. They're actually really employees, and you must compensate them as employees. Do you want to provide more context on AB 5, Mary? And I know Matt just did a little bit, but what else should we know about that?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I was also going to jump in and say is that there is a difference between being a gig worker or click worker, as they're sometimes called, and being an independent contractor. I mean, there are a lot of people who legitimately own their own business, work with many companies, many clients, and do make a good living. And the gig worker is a different thing. So I'd like to read some of the verbiage from AB 5, just one of the sentences that gives a quick overview of why it exists, and then we can go into a little bit about what it means. So talking about AB 5, the bill would provide that for purposes of the provisions of the Labor Code, the Unemployment Insurance Code, and the wage orders of the Industrial Welfare Commission, a person providing labor or services for remuneration shall be considered an employee rather than an independent contractor unless the hiring entity demonstrates that the person is free from the control and direction of the hiring entity in connection with the performance of the work, the person performs work that is outside the usual course of the hiring entity's business, and the person is customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, or business. So that, it's a lot right there, but if we can take a look at what a little bit of what that means, basically, what AB5 is sort of trying to clarify is whether an person is an employee, and an employee would be considered someone on who the business depends. So, for example, if we take Instacart, the point, or like the main service of Instacart is providing, is people, the so-called shoppers, will go into a grocery store, fill a grocery cart with things that a client has ordered, and then bring it to the client's house. So in that case, the main service that's provided is grocery shopping. And all of those people who provide the service of grocery shopping, that is the main service of Instacart, so those people should be considered employees. On the other hand, if, for example, Instacart needs a copywriter, they need someone who's going to, write a new website for them, that's not the main service that they provide. And so in that case, the copywriter or the web designer would still be considered an independent contractor because that's outside the normal business that they provide. However, the shoppers, because that is the business that Instacart provides, those should be considered employees and should be protected as employees with insurance, with unemployment insurance specifically under this law, but should have protections of employment.
And there is a line that stood out to me in some of the articles, or rather in one of the articles that I read in preparation for today's episode, which is sort of Uber's de facto response whenever this kind of concern is brought up. And I'll quote it now. Employees build the marketplace, contractors do the gigs. So a company like Uber or Instacart would argue that, no, our employees are the people who designed our app.
Right, the back end, the algorithm.
The platform.
The platform. And who's doing the gig?
Our contractors.
Our contractors, which is sort of the people that we're talking about now, the people who are not being compensated for their labor, right? So listeners, as a reminder, you're tuned in to 100.9 FM WXIR in Rochester. You're listening to Evidence of Design, and we're talking about some of the big picture changes in our economy today and going forward. We're talking about things like automation, the gig economy, the fourth industrial revolution, and we're going to get into right now platform businesses. We'd love to hear from you about any of these thoughts. These are big picture changes that are really affecting us all, and you can reach us at 585-219-8889. Again, that's 585-219-8889. Give us a call and share your thoughts. We were just talking about the gig economy. That's the idea that you can have flexibility or kind of be your own boss and do labor for a company, but you're not really considered an employee. California passed something called AB5. That was an attempt to really give these contract workers so-called employment rights. There's been a lot of controversy with AB5, even from the contractors themselves, whom this law is supposed to benefit, and for a number of reasons. We don't have time to get into it, but New York is considering something similar to AB5 now with some changes to it. And so the point of all this is saying, look, the government is recognizing a need to step into the so-called free market and protect the rights of workers in these instances, because their rights are being either infringed or not looked out for, or that just simply the free market is not meeting the needs of living a healthy, sustainable life for people, right? Because you don't have health care as a gig worker. You don't have guaranteed employment as a gig worker. You don't have you don't even know why your wages are set in some instances, because they're set by algorithms that the platform provides. And so there's a lot of uncertainty in the gig economy, and it represents a very unstable or untenable or questionable future of what it means to do work as a gig.
I think I would like to jump in just a little bit as to why this is being contested, just to give a little bit of context. So in order to be a successful independent contractor, you can't work with just one client. Usually, as an independent contractor, it means that you do a kind of work that a company doesn't need all of the time. I brought the example of copywriting. Other examples might be, translation, where you don't need that thing all of the time, but you might need it occasionally. So in order to be successful as an independent contractor, you need to work with multiple clients. And the reason that many true independent contractors and not click workers are contesting this is that in becoming an employee, you kind of can only be attached to one of those companies, which does not provide enough work for you to make a living.
Right.
And you need to have multiple companies in order to be successful. On the other hand, as a click worker, you are expected to be available all the time for the one company that you work for. And in that case, employment is necessary in order to protect you, because that company is demanding your time and services at their desire. So there is a difference in how it is to be an independent contractor. I mentioned that earlier. There's a difference between the two. But that's why independent contractors are contesting it, because many independent contractors have now been classified as gig workers and are fighting to be reclassified as independent contractors. There are a couple tests that California requires that independent contractors or will be independent contractors take in order to have that classification, and many people are not meeting the classification who think that they should. So that's where the contestation is coming in from that end. On the other hand, like you mentioned, there is no guaranteed health coverage, and so that's something that is an issue that maybe could, be solved by universal health care or something.
Right. But you're also not earning a pension. There's no employee, there's no employer, payback for things like mileage. So if you drive for Uber, you got to pay for your own car, and gas and so on and so forth. So
and that depends on the company, of course. I mean, there might be some companies who do pay for those things. Right. But yeah, that's just a little bit of why it's being contested by independent contractors.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the gig economy. Let's shift gears slightly to something known as the platform economy. This was brought up in the World Economic Forum last week. There was a lot of sessions from the world's top business and political leaders on this notion of the platform economy. It was kind of glorified as like most of the economic growth in the previous years have come from businesses that are platform businesses. And in a nutshell, platform businesses are those that are kind of like middle people between buyers and sellers. So it's very obvious.
Think of Facebook selling your data to advertisers.
Correct. It's very obvious to think of the platform businesses that are out there. Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, Instacart, Amazon, Pinterest, Google, Facebook, YouTube, Alibaba, PayPal, and even things like video game consoles. The Xbox One is the platform for developing for video game companies and developers to make video games on, and gamers use the platform of the Xbox to play the games. So Microsoft in that instance is the platform. Sometimes Microsoft makes games for its own platform, but oftentimes there are outside companies making games for the platform of Xbox. And so that's just an easy example of the platform economy. And now why these platform models are significant is because honestly, if you think of like the top companies, everything that we're talking about, they all do essentially the exact same thing. They are simply a very fancy algorithm and search engine to allow you as a consumer to so-called get easy and cheap access to a good or service. And they also allow sellers to have a very large marketplace to advertise the service that you are providing. So in terms of Airbnb, the Airbnb just hosts the platform for all of its content creators and consumers to use, and it puts companies like you mentioned Uber in this position to sort of walk both sides of the line and say something that's advantageous to them, like, wait a second, no, these drivers, they're not our employees. We create the platform for them to drive through, and so much of our economy now is sort of being broken up into various platforms, and we're all just going to end up saying sweet, catchy sounding nouns for all things that we want to do. There's like, I'm joking there, but there's two, what are those two e-scooter brands that are in big, I don't think they're in Rochester
Lime
yet.
and something else.
Bird or something?
Lime and Bird.
Lime and Bird, yeah. They're like, it's funny that I remember taking entrepreneurship in a past life, and before I was reincarnated, yeah. And they were always like, so if you're gonna name a business or something, never do like a simple, catchy noun or phrase for something, right? And like all of our biggest companies are out there just like sound something completely random and obfuscating.
Yeah.
Like Limeberg, Google, you know.
Remove
I
a
mean,
vowel.
George
Yeah.
Eastman said, you know, in creating Kodak, that literally it's not a word for anything. And I think his rationale was like, make something that no one's heard of before that's easy to say and people will remember. And, I mean,
Does evidence of design not fit that bill?
no.
Oh, shoot.
Too many syllables.
All right. Well,
It's a good name, though.
we'll consult with our media director and rebrand ourselves.
You'll
Why?
consult with
Mary,
yourself.
are you, yeah,
Ready to rebrand.
yeah. So anyways, these platform businesses, I think it's really interesting to think about. So let's just take a short case study from something. Let's take Facebook, for instance, and look at its model for being a business. You have,
The service is ostensibly free.
yes. So Facebook is free, right? Absolutely free. But who are the so there's three categories. There's the suppliers, the demanders, and then the platform itself. So Facebook as the platform, of course, it provides a free platform. Who are the suppliers, though? It's actually you as
Yeah.
the user. You are supplying Facebook your data, whether you like it or not, at all times when you're using it. So you become a new raw material. Facebook has figured out a way to commodify your actions and behavior. You turn into a raw material in the capitalist mode of production through something like Facebook. You are the raw material. So instead of extracting things from Earth, they're extracting data from your behaviors.
Harvesting.
We are the new data mines.
And you're not paid for it, right? So that's a big question. Mary, you can jump in on this too. That's a big question in this new economy that we're going into, is we are the raw materials, but we're not compensated for being the materials and the modes of production. And that is a very important thing.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to one of the panels that was from this year's Davos conference, and the title of the panel is "The Human Behind the Machine" or something to that effect, talking about sort of the shadow work that's done in mining data and what that means for those of us whose data is being mined. Usually, it just means that we're being sold stuff without our consent, and that we're not getting compensated for the useful information that is being provided through our data. There was one interesting example, if I may, on this panel. So the Davos takes place in Switzerland, and if you're not familiar, Switzerland often has, I mean, it's not part of the European Union, even though it's like in the middle of Europe. It has very, very strict privacy and protection laws. And one of the panelists came out with this idea of, or with the example of the self-driving car. You know, it's something that is on the horizon, being tested, definitely exists, but isn't used on the roads yet. And he was saying, okay, well, Switzerland has not said that they will allow self-driving cars until they are proven to be 100% safe. But how do we learn that they're 100% safe until we test them on the streets and in reality? And he went into to talk about, what does this car need to know in order to become 100% safe? The car needs to be able to recognize different ages, different human emotions, because it needs to be able to predict every movement that a human is going to make in order to not hit a person. Again, in order to be on the streets in Switzerland. And if you're not able to test on the streets, then it's never going to get there. And so what could happen instead is that companies will go outside of Switzerland to a nation that has more lax privacy laws and safety laws, and will test the car there, and we'll learn from people there about human emotions, what to expect. And when, based on that data of people getting nearly into accidents or getting injured or dying, then maybe, the car can say, okay, we've learned from all these things, we're 100% safe, and then Switzerland will be like, great, you can come on the roads here, the car company will make all this profit, and the nation where it was tested will get zero compensation. The people who have been injured by these cars will get zero compensation unless they sue, which they may not be able to or may not know what happened. And so that's a very extreme example of what it means to have your data mined. So obviously, getting almost hit by a car in a nation with more lax safety laws is very, very important information for the car company that's inventing a self-driving car. And that company is going to make a lot of profit off of that information. But the people who provided the information and who maybe are getting injured from it, or nearly, are not going to see any of that. And so that's kind of this, the problem that's being shown. And maybe with Facebook, it's not as drastic. We're not almost dying, but we are still, our data is being used for profit of someone else, and we're not going to be part of that. Mm-hmm. And so the question that was brought up in this panel is, does that, at what point does our data being mined qualify as being a worker?
Right, as labor.
As labor. Mm-hmm. So when you almost get hit by a car, were you working at that moment? Mm-hmm. And how do you claim that? How do you get compensated for that? Or where do we draw the line between what is work and what is not? Because at the moment, we can't really draw that line. Mm-hmm. And AI is accelerating too quickly for us to be able to keep up with legislation to protect ourselves.
Right. Yeah, that's really fascinating stuff about what it means to do labor, to be a laborer and things like that. As more and more of our life in society is turned over to artificial learning and machine intelligence and things of that nature.
Even just thinking about the notion of the Instagram life, for example, of there's a whole generation now of influencers on Instagram who are turning their personal lives, this was not talked about in this conference, but who are turning their personal lives into profit. Mm-hmm. By sharing all of their information.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, all their information, all their relationships. I read another article recently about consent in that, what that means for your personal relationships when, as a friend, you are becoming part of this person's lifestyle and work.
Right.
So that's a different kind of facet of the same thing.
Yeah. Let's strip away. Let's step back and look at Facebook one more time. If you take away everything that Facebook can do for you, like the timeline or look past years, this is what I did on this day, and hey, I can talk to my friends. The business model of Facebook, if you just look at what it does as a company, is that you as the user are the raw material. The people who are demanders, they're actually the advertisers. They're the people who pay Facebook to target advertisements towards specific groups of people to hopefully affect the way that you behave. And then Facebook itself, although it just calls itself the platform, a neutral space, they're responsible, in fact, for, most of the news that Americans get in the country, because most Americans get their news from Facebook, and so on and so forth. And so we're in this kind of nebulous space where companies can walk both lines, as we said before with Uber, and sort of abscond themselves from responsibility when it's convenient for them. And we just have very big questions to tackle. And actually, with our introduction to Evidence of Design in our pre-recorded introduction, there's a clip from Mark Zuckerberg saying, there's a lot of moral and legal issues as a society that we're going to have to wrestle with, and that's when he was testifying to Congress. And it's yes, Mark Zuckerberg.
You will have to wrestle with that.
Yes, we all will. So it's just very, I think, interesting things to think about. Why don't we take a short break, though, here on Evidence of Design on 100.9 FM WXAR. We're talking about various big picture changes in our economy. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call during the break or afterwards about anything that you think. The gig economy, the fourth industrial revolution, platform economies, the future of labor. We want to hear from you. Any questions or thoughts that you have. Give us a ring, 585-219-8889. Again, that's 585-219-8889. We'll be right back. Hang on.
Stay Hungry by the Talking Heads.
And this is Evidence of Design on 100.9 FM WXAR in Rochester. Let's keep talking about big changes to our economy and the changing meaning of labor going forward. Let's talk about now automation and artificial intelligence. Of course, there's someone running for president on the Democratic Ticket. That's Andrew Yang, whose kind of main platform is about universal basic income. And he argues that the government should give everyone universal basic income, so around $1,000 a month, because of the effects of automation, meaning that as our technology gets more and more sophisticated, and as more and more of our technology is controlled by things like artificial intelligence, it will get rid of the need for so many jobs. And in fact, there are studies out there that say within the next decade, 1.5 million jobs in the U.S. alone will disappear due to automation. A lot of these are like retail jobs or trucking jobs. You know, you're talking about self-driving cars. There's self-driving cars. You don't need truckers anymore, right?
I mean, arguably also with trains, you don't need truckers, but that's a different issue.
Any kind of labor that you can imagine can conceivably be replaced by artificial intelligence at some point down the road.
Right, in some level, especially in the manufacturing sectors. So, 1.5 million jobs in the U.S. in the next decade alone will be replaced due to automation, and that can conceivably only increase in the years to come afterwards. And worldwide, there's 800 million jobs that will be outdated or replaced due to automation in the near future. 800 million, that's almost 1 billion, which is 1/7 of the planet, right? So there's going to be a lot of need for humanity and governments and businesses to figure out, what does labor mean? If you're not going to be able to work for money, how do you sort of live within a capitalist system where in order to access any good or service, you need money? So it's a big questions through automation and artificial intelligence. Mary, do you want to help us explore more about either of those two topics?
Yeah. And I guess one thing that we were talking about while we were off the air listening to that lovely song
by the Talking Heads.
I want to correct myself. I said the Talking Heads. It's just Talking Heads.
Oh, okay.
Really?
It's just Talking Heads.
It's like, it's not the Ukraine. Thank you, Republican senators.
But do you know where that is?
Yeah.
Oh my
Can you
God.
point to it on a map?
I can't imagine what you're referring to, Matt.
Oh man. Anyway, thanks to Talking Heads, we are keeping hungry about automation and about artificial intelligence. Look at that hook back into the topic. Anyway, I think one thing that I would like to take a look at is the difference between the effects of artificial intelligence and the effects of automation. I think a lot of, in a lot of ways, we look at them in a very similar way, like, because in both ways they're affecting labor, they're affecting the way that we interact with how we buy and sell and with other people. I guess the way, and maybe you guys can jump in and talk about your thoughts as well, is at least the way I understand it, automation is a replacement of physical labor. So it'd be creating machines to actually be the ones doing work, but still be, sorry, my bees are really popping there, but are still being controlled by human intelligence. And on the other hand, artificial intelligence is the use of algorithms to be the ones, to have machines be the ones making decisions. I mentioned before this panel I was watching and listening to from the Davos Summit, and one of the questions that they brought up was, what will the role of humanity be when, or like, will AI still need humanity, is maybe a better way of putting it. And the majority of the audience said yes, and I was kind of curious if that was out of fear.
Strangely optimistic to me.
I know. And one of the things that they were talking about is the use of AI in healthcare. And it's like, okay, so one of the ways that AI could theoretically be used in healthcare is to, take all of the, like, you scan a patient, for example, a patient comes in with a cough, you take a scan, and then the AI, having seen many different diagnoses, would make the diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And that would inform then the way that patient is treated. But that's putting a lot of trust in the machinery without, a human being the one to actually make the decision. And there's obviously room for human error, but I think there's also room for machine misinformation or incorrect information or malfunctioning. And one of the alternatives someone brought up was like, well, you can have AI make the decisions and replace humans as being doctors. On the other hand, you can use AI, for example, in training. So you would train doctors through AI, for example, using virtual reality for training surgeons in places where they're not going to be having a lot of practice. So they would, put on a virtual reality set and be able to, quote unquote, do a surgery in real time without actually having a patient there who needs surgery, so that they can practice and then be better surgeons themselves and be able to make the best decisions. And they also brought up the idea, just, despite the fact of how quote unquote intelligent algorithms have become, they still don't, even, with all the machines that we have in the world, a single human brain has more capacity than all of the machines in the world to make decisions. So we shouldn't be using machines to replace humans. We should be using it to enhance the capacity that humans have to make informed decisions. And so this question of where we're going with AI, I think it's very split. Some people want decision making to be replaced by machines, and some people want labor to be replaced by machines. In both cases, I think we have the question of what will labor be and what will labor be meaning. But they are very different ways of looking at the future.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Do you want decision making to be replaced by machines or labor being replaced by machines? That's really compelling. Let's turn now to a caller that we have on 100.9 FM WXIR. This is Evidence of Design. Hello, you are on the air.
Hey, Aaron from Queens here. How's it going, guys?
Aaron from Queens, great to hear from you. Thanks for giving us a call. What is on your mind?
I'm just calling because I want to really question why we're all so scared of automation. It just speaks to how messed up society is and how terribly resources have been distributed so far, that we're all scared of robots taking all the jobs. That's been the dream of humanity since literally forever. That, nobody has to plow the fields anymore, nobody has to make the shoes anymore, nobody has to weave the clothes anymore, nobody has to, cook the food or take care of the sick or whatever it is. It's labor, it's literally getting rid of all labor. And, we shouldn't be scared of that as long as we have a society that can equitably distribute the fruits of our technological triumph, which is very hard to imagine right now, in a ultra-capitalist world where inequality is getting bigger and bigger. But it just really speaks to how messed up society has become, that that's suddenly a bad thing, robots taking all the jobs. I guess you could call me techno-utopianist in the sense that I think there is a way to structure society in which robots taking all the jobs is a very, very good thing. It's sort of like the dream of humanity. We can all just relax and do whatever and send our bodies into space on, cryogenic long distance, millionaire sleeps and discover, planets and whatever, and have the robots run the space stations and the pods and all that. I don't know, man. All I'm saying is it's possible. This is a dream. There are some people that want to outlaw automation. I think that's a terrible idea. I think we should outlaw automation in warfare for sure. Drones shouldn't be the ones. Actually, Andrew Yang, you were just talking about him. I just saw a headline yesterday. He has proposed outlawing automation in warfare, specifically for that reason, because if you have drones doing all the killing, then it sort of makes it a lot easier to go do killing, because then you don't have to worry about putting human bodies on the line, and
right.
A human doesn't have to worry about pulling the trigger and all that. But yeah, I think as long as we elect Bernie Sanders, starting there, and restructure society to be an equitable distribution of resources, then it would be a great thing to have the robots take all the jobs. Thank you.
Aaron, that's hang on the line for just 1 second. I remember
Okay.
John Maynard Keynes is an economist in the 19th century, and he famously in the early 20s or 30s was talking about automation and saying hopefully by the year 2000, humans will be working 20 hours a week, and if anything, we're working more than that. And so from what I hear you arguing, we're living in such a perverse free market capitalist society now where our norms are so engendered with the meaning of having to work that we sort of forgot to imagine a world where we're free from labor. And
right, and that's what the capitalist class wants you to be. Is it wants you to feel like your only value is the labor you produce, because that enriches them. And obviously, the risk of automation without restructuring society around an equitable distribution of resources is that you have this capitalist class, maybe 300, 400, 500 people in the entire world who own the financing, own the factories, own all the entire chain means of production, and they don't have to contend with labor unions anymore. Robots don't strike or organize. And then you have a permanent, almost universal element of humanity that's just a permanent underclass, and because there aren't even any ways for them to produce any labor, they're of no value to the capitalist overclass anymore. That's sort of a this has been explored in lots of science fiction. It's a dystopian techno reality that's possible, but they need to go hand in hand for sure.
I would argue, though, actually, that there is, that the thing that those people produce is still the data that is being harvested that they are not being compensated for. It looks like we do actually have another caller.
This is the first.
I don't know how to do two calls at once.
Well, you guys have heard enough from Aaron from Queens, so please, by all means.
Aaron,
right.
really appreciate you calling in. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very useful. Thank you. So let's try another caller. Hello, you are on the air.
Yes, this is Jeff from Webster. Very interesting show. I just wanted to note, though, that from what I've read, the children of parents who work in the gig economy, who don't have regular work hours, the children that grow up in families like that or have parents that are trying to juggle multiple different jobs, they're often at a disadvantage in the sense that they don't have parents that are able to spend as much time with them. And then also the workers that are often in the gig economy, they might be minority or people who are earning less money. So I think a lot of thought should be given to this gig economy, how it's disadvantaging children and also certain minorities.
So I'm sorry, maybe I just missed this. So, Jeff, you're saying that the gig economy is disadvantageous to young people without parents who are good caretakers. Because why was that?
I think.
Well, it's because the parents aren't working. The parents aren't working regular hours, so it's the children that are put at a disadvantage when the parents aren't able to be there at the regular hours. So the children growing up in those households are not doing as well, from what I've read of various studies. Plus also the hours that are often quite irregular often are imposed on minorities. So some thought has to be given to that, how the gig economy disadvantages certain groups.
Got it.
This is something that the New Republic article that we referenced at the top of the hour went into a bit, which was that oftentimes companies like Uber and Instacart present working for them as the sort of ideal where you get to be your own boss, where you get to set your own hours, where they're flexible. But the reality is, in order to sort of, for many people at least, in this line of work, that in order to even sort of get by, the reality is that you are sort of owned by these companies and that you have to work a lot and at odd times just in order to make ends meet. And so I don't have any trouble personally imagining that that puts a great deal of strain on interpersonal relationships in a family setting.
I think actually that these, I agree and was actually going to say the same thing that you said, Matt, which is that, these are given, or these are jobs that are offered with the face of, being more flexible. And I think they're really just a new face for the same issues that we've been facing for a long time, in that people who are more wealthy are outsourcing the labor that they don't want to do, such as driving in bad traffic, doing their grocery shopping. And I mean, there are places where, if someone doesn't have a driver's license, that could be very advantageous to have someone else to drive. Or if you had surgery and can't lift things, it's helpful to have someone to do your groceries. But the majority of the time that those services are being used is people who are at their regular jobs, who are outsourcing labor to people who are more vulnerable and who need to make some money and are, have to be willing to do it in a different way. So I think that you bring up a very, very good point that we should get into in a future show of what the gig economy means for a classed society.
Mm-hmm. That is, yeah. Thank you, Aaron from Queens and Jeff from Webster, for giving us a call at 585-219-8889. We just have a few minutes left on Evidence of Design on 100.9 FM WXIR in Rochester. We've been talking this hour about the future of labor and big picture changes in the economy. This past week was the meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, where the world's kind of leading capitalists come together and try to figure out how to, one could argue, make more money. Others could argue do their work to the benefit of society. And so the business community right now, I think, is putting up there's a movement from the business community to put up a face that, look, businesses can no longer just look out for themselves. They have to benefit society in some way. This is going to be challenging as we're talking about things like the gig economy, because it does, in my opinion, the gig economy kind of further proves the faults of the business community. As opposed to, the benefits of the business community. But so there's the gig economy. There's also the sort of fourth industrial revolution that we didn't really define, but that includes things like automation and also artificial intelligence and new businesses like platform businesses and platform economies that are really just essentially monopolizing your ability to access things. We didn't really talk about that when we talked about platform businesses, but there's a reason why there's not multiple Amazons and multiple Facebooks and multiple, Uber and Lyft, Lime and Bird. Sometimes there's just two businesses in these platform businesses. There's a reason for that, and because usually it's winner take all. If you're the first one in the market to be the middleman or middlewoman, then you sort of control all the means of production in that regard. So there's sort of a monopolization effect too on society. So lots of big picture things that we need to be thinking about. Mary, there's a lot more we could have talked about with artificial intelligence and AI. We didn't even get to reskilling, which was another important facet that we could include, but we're going to have to end it here right now. You can always tune into our episodes of Evidence of Design on YouTube. Search for the Evidence of Design YouTube channel. Be specific with your search, though. Search for Evidence of Design episode 1 through 81, and they'll pop up for you. We've had a great time being on 100.9 FM WXIR over the past 2 or so years, and thank you for tuning in to your grassroots radio show. It's great work to have this platform in the community. We have to end it there, though. I was your host, Jason Taylor, joined by good friends and co-hosts Matt Treadwell.
Farewell.
And Mary Lawrence.
Have a great one.
Be well, be safe, and bye-bye.